So again, good afternoon and welcome to our program, Home Sweet Home Funerals. My name is Shanae McPherson, Volunteer Connect 55 Plus Administrator for Orange County Department on Aging. And on behalf of the department and on behalf of our End of Life Choices Senior Resource Team, I would like to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Thank you to Janice Tyler. I know she's in one of my little boxes somewhere. I can't see her, but I know she's here, our department director, and to all of the Department on Aging staff and our End of Life Choices Senior Resource Team members for your continued support. On average, a typical funeral can cost a person over $8,000. And with Social Security contributing less than $300 for death benefits, this can create an anxiety level that no person or loved one should ever have to face. So during today's presentation, you will be provided with an alternative to the conventional funeral ceremony. You will learn how funerals can honor your memory or those that you love legally, safely, and in a cost-effective manner. I am honored to introduce Sara Williams this afternoon. Today's speaker is Sara Williams of Shrouding Sisters. She is a home funeral guide and funeral memorial celebrant, offering end-of-life education, counseling, and services throughout the Piedmont and Triangle areas. And we are so honored and thankful to have you with us this afternoon, Sara. We are looking forward to a wonderful presentation, and I will turn it over to you so that you can share your screen and I can stop seeing mine.
Hey, everybody, hold on one second. We're going to get and Shanae is going to do something for me before we get started.
I am.
I think before I hit the share, you're going to do your thing.
I am. So we have a poll that we would like you all to participate in. There's just one question, and you'll see the poll launching right now. And it's, have you heard of the term home funeral? We'll give it just a few more minutes. You guys were really quick. Okay. So Sara, there are your percentages.
Wow. Oh, I need to let you do that.
There we go. So 71% of our participants today have heard of the term home funeral.
So I'm worried about the 29% that haven't, but we're going to take care of that right now, aren't we? We're going to try. Okay. Thank y'all for doing that. Thank you, Shanae, for doing that. Let me get my first. And thumbs up if you can see. I'm trying to get my, can you see my screen? Okay. And Shanae, I'm trying to make that box of people disappear. Okay, well, I just want to say hello to you all and thanks for being here today. I want to give a special shout out and thanks to Ann Weston of the Green Burial Project, who told me last year, Sara, we know a lot of important stuff and we need to be making some PowerPoint presentations. about all the things that we know. So here we are. And also a big shout out to Shanae McPherson, who has done such a great job of marketing and having my back to get me here today. By the way, this picture that you see right now on your screen is a real family taking part in a real home funeral. And I love to see their smiling faces. Have you ever thought about the land that you're on? I always like to begin by acknowledging the traditional ancestral territory where we all live, learn, and work today. There were ancient caretakers of this land, people who were subject to centuries of oppression. We're located on the traditional territory of the Catawba people who settled the Carolina Piedmont over 10,000 years ago. And we honor and respect the diverse indigenous peoples connected to this territory that we define today as the state of North Carolina, including the Kahari, the Lumbee, the Meherrin, the Occaneechi-Saponi, the Halawa-Saponi, the Waccamaw-Siouan, the Saponi, and the Eastern Band of the Cherokee. Thank you. So just a little note about me, my cred, so to speak, because I sure don't want any of you thinking I'm associated with the Blair Witch Project or anything like that. I have been helping families care for their own dead since 2014. But I think maybe in my mind, since I was a child, I'm also a certified Insight celebrant and an emeritus board member of the National Home Funeral Alliance. All that just to say that I am passionate about getting the almost 30% of you educated about your rights to care for your own dead or your loved ones in the comfort of your own home. So do you know all your rights? Is death an emergency? You really do have two choices here. And we're going to explore what happens when you use a traditional funeral home or have a home funeral. Typically, when a loved one dies, we do find ourselves in a state of shock and confusion. And it's important for all of us to have an after-death plan of care in place. And that means you have thought about it, written it down, and you've told someone. And I got this from Ann Weston, Plan, Write, and Tell. And we're going to walk through two choices. We're going to go through 3 typical days of what happens when we use a conventional funeral home and when we do these things ourselves. So I want to be clear from the beginning that many people assume because I'm a home funeral guide that I must surely hate funeral homes. That's not true at all. And I have worked, for example, with Lau Funeral Home close to me here in Burlington on many occasions. Not everyone, you know, wants to be transported to the cemetery in the back of my husband's truck. Although, yes, it's legal. If you know your rights, then you know you only have to purchase those goods and services that you need and want. So I'm urging you ahead of time, make a list of what matters to you. Be familiar as you can with your rights. And a good place to start is the Funeral Consumers Alliance, North Carolina. And that website is right here. funeralsnc.org. And if you do want to use a funeral home, you'll know now that you can purchase services a la carte and find a funeral director who is willing to work with your particular situation. So what was once old and tried and true and normal is becoming new again as more and more people learn about the option of in-home funerals. They are safe, they are legal, they're slower paced, they're personal, intimate, and it's your right to hold these home funerals. And ordinary people are doing this every day. So how did we get here? You heard Shanae say your typical funeral today is going to cost well over $8,000. We need a little background history. So the development of our modern funeral industry is directly traced to the Civil War, and thousands of Union soldiers were being killed, and the Johnnies who couldn't go marching home, they were dying on Southern battlefields, and the railroads refused to transport their decaying corpses. So enter the field embalmers who used arsenic mixed with zinc, mercuric chloride, creosote, turpentine, and alcohol to preserve the bodies. And it actually worked pretty well. As the war continued, these field embalmers just followed the actions. They would set up a shed, they'd take over a barn or a shed near the battlefield, or set up a tent and embalm bodies there. Okay, and why is my slide not advancing? Give me a second. This has not happened before. Let's try again. This is embarrassing. Let's go back to the beginning. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. So after the war, many Americans first became aware of the option of embalming following President Lincoln's assassination, when his embalmed body traveled by train across much of the country for the purpose of being viewed by the public. Folks marveled at the fact that he didn't look dead, but only asleep. And soon the elite became very interested and wanted to be embalmed. I mean, if it's good enough for Lincoln, why not Dad? Abraham was transported from DC to Chicago. He was taken to his home in Springfield. It taken almost 3 weeks. And this is at a time when funeral homes began to be developed because families were moving to cities. They no longer needed their parlors for the wakes, and the cemeteries were no longer within walking distance. Home funerals, as I mentioned before, were just totally normal. Our grandparents and great-parents and great-grandparents arranged home funerals as a matter of course and had their backup people to help them. Bodies were laid out on the dining room table. A neighbor, no doubt, made the pine box, and then you borrowed the cart and they were buried in the lower 40. Ask your family members for their stories. See if you can find out about your own family's traditions and maybe create some new ones. These pictures really, this is my maternal and paternal grandparents, and oh, how I wish I could talk to them now. So let's see what happens, the course of events when we go through a conventional funeral home. They're called, the funeral home is called, they're going to send the transport team with the gurney for transport back to the funeral home. And I really believe that of all the moments when a funeral director could make the most impact, this would be it, the moment of body removal. If they could just learn to see this as a ceremony, as like a celebrant would. Oh my, imagine using a beautiful quilt instead of that ugly cot cover, not rushing the family, but giving them all the time they need, maybe helping them with a simple shrouding ceremony at the bedside with the sheets, playing some gorgeous music, soothing music on their cell phone before they leave the home with the body. And then going out slowly, asking the family to accompany them if they want to the van. So day one, you're going to be called in, and my guess is that all of us have been in the arrangement room. You're going to bring the clothes up to the funeral home. You're going to make selections for caskets, yes or no on embalming, plan the service, the flowers, the catering, figure out if you're doing a burial or cremation. And you're just so limited. Viewing and visitation is at the funeral home's discretion. You're totally on their watch. And it can feel restrictive. Day 3, this is going to be the last opportunity for you to view your loved one before the casket's closed. And there's usually a hearse to transport the body to the church or crematory. There may be a private graveside service with burial prior to any other more public service. Here are the questions I am always asked. Are home funerals even legal? Yes. Can I transport my own dead? Yes. Is there a legal limit on how long I can keep my own dead at home? No. Just please know that this does require planning and people, and it really helps that you've identified who is going to be in your home funeral community before you die. Sometimes you go outside of your family because maybe their ick factor is too high. Plenty of resources. We'll get to those towards the end of this presentation. And people in your community that you can talk to and learn from. And this is really an opportunity for you to create maybe a new ritual and a new family tradition. This is me in 2017 at a real home funeral. You can read more about the backstory and how this family worked together for this home funeral in an article by Esquire magazine online entitled Kate's Still Here. If you Google Kate's Still Here, you can read this story. But the body is at home. If it wasn't at home when the death occurred, it has been transported back home, either from the hospital or an assisted living facility. We are washing, anointing, and dressing the body. We are keeping the body cold with something recyclable I use called Techni Ice. I don't like to use dry ice, it scares me. And we replace the chillers every 3 to 4 hours. And the body can lay at home for a vigil, usually for up to 3 days. So day one, you're on your own time. You don't have to go anywhere. You're planning the service. Maybe you're working on the obituary. You have the gifts of time and presence. This is priceless. You're arranging for the death certificate, all these things, but you're at home. Day two, your family is determining the visiting hours and what tone, what's the tone. You'll continue to check the body to be sure it's cold. People are going to be bringing in food, I'm sure. And if you feel like getting up at 2 in the morning to go sit with your Aunt Bessie, you have the prerogative to do this because you're in your home. And notice the children. The children are involved here. They're painting an ordinary cardboard box, a cremation casket. And look how lovely that is. So just for a moment, contrast this picture with the one where you saw the fleet of hearses out on the highway. This is a green burial, and a green or a natural burial just sort of go hand in hand with a home funeral. It's not necessary. Some people prefer cremation, that's their right. But look at the themes at work here. This family really feels like they're on a journey with this death. And they're getting to observe that the body, this life is part of nature. There is no death in nature. It's so organic. And as they return the body to the earth, they feel the usefulness, and the changing seasons will reveal this. I just want to say somebody's not muted. So here's the pros and cons of a home funeral versus a conventional funeral home. The pros are, as I've mentioned, you're on your own schedule, time, the gifts of time and presence. And honestly, I just want to say, I think everybody is just one bad funeral service away from saying that'll be the last time. We can do a home funeral so much easier and better. The pros, you know, maybe you don't want a buck convention. This is the way you've always done it. They're going to take care of everything. It is expensive. That's a con, a big con of conventional funeral homes. So these are just things you have to think about as you make your own plans. 9 states in this country require the use of a licensed funeral director. And those states are Connecticut, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, Nebraska, New Jersey, and New York. And I'm just thankful that North Carolina is a home funeral friendly state. And so much so that you're looking at my real license plate on my car. I often wonder how much fun people are having trying to figure out what home funds means. But I want you to realize that in North Carolina, we have the right to care for and dispose of our own dead. This is one thing I want you to be sure you know about. The Funeral Rule of 1984, put into law by the Federal Trade Commission. Now, the Funeral Consumers Alliance right now is working to get the funeral rule updated so that every funeral home in this country will be required to put their prices online on their website. Right now, that is not the case. If you've ever shopped for a car or a washing machine, what's the first thing you do? You go online to compare prices and see what the deals are. Well, right now you can't do that because the funeral rule has not been updated. But you do have many, many rights that my guess is a lot of you don't know about. You can purchase your casket at IKEA or Costco, take it to a funeral home, and they have to use it. And they can't charge you a handling fee. As a consumer, you don't have to consume any funeral goods or services that you don't want, including embalming, which, by the way, is never required by law in any state. If you call a funeral home and ask for prices, they have to give you that information over the phone. If you go there, they will give you what's called a general price list. They have to give you a general price list. And you get to see that information before you're ever taken to the casket room. And you don't have to buy things in a bundle. You can purchase funeral goods and services a la carte. Yes, I want to put a plug in here for the Funeral Consumers Alliance, North Carolina. I had previously given you that website, funeralsnc.org. We just posted prices for all the funeral homes in the state of North Carolina, and you can find that information at our website. These are the two legal statutes within our state that give you the right to custody of a dead body and to notify the county registrar of the death. This is General Statute 138-112, a funeral director or person acting as such. That means you or me. And this is 138-115, the funeral director or person acting as such. And the death certificate, a home funeral guide is perfectly, I carry these around in my bag. It ain't rocket science. It's a lot of biographical information. And of course, a physician has to sign off on it. But most people are under hospice care, and hospice is going to initiate this paperwork for you just like a hospital would, because they're not going to release a body without a death certificate. But I'm just saying, and you can pick these up from the county registrar if you're interested in just wondering what's on a death certificate. So this slide right here really does say it all. No law requires you to use a funeral director. They are there to support your wishes. You are the funeral director. And that makes me want to do another little survey right now. I'm going to see if I can move some faces over here. Well, most everybody's got their video off. But my guess is that a lot of hands are going to come flying up. I just want us to think through what you would need to know to be able to help yourself, your friends, your family. So let's just think about these skills for a minute. So raise your hands or wave for each thing you already know how to do. Have you changed diapers on a baby or adult or someone in between? Yeah, you can also click at the bottom. You can do the raise your hand with the little thing. I'm seeing a lot of people's hands go up. Have you helped someone bathe and dress? Do you do hair or makeup for fancy occasions so they look just right? Can you drive something a little bigger than a car, say a minivan or an SUV? Can you lift heavy things, or do you have people in your network who can? Do you have carpentry or sewing skills or other arts and crafts skills? The hands are flying. Have you filled out government paperwork like taxes, driver's license, Social Security, Medicare forms? Have you had to be incredibly polite and or persistent on the phone, maybe when trying to get through to your health insurance agent? Have you ever organized a party, a reunion, a big dinner, a meeting, or a trip where you had to really be concerned about seating, parking, and having people show up at a certain time? Wow, you look really qualified to me. And did you guess that these skills are what you are hiring a funeral director for? Please remember that under North Carolina law, you can control this and pay only for those things that you need. Here are some good resources. I want to direct you to the National Home Funeral Alliance. Their website is just, this is one of their excellent books, that planning guide and workbook for home funeral families, available on Amazon. And I've mentioned the Funeral Consumers Alliance, North Carolina. Both of these organizations would love your support and to have you become members. So that's just something for you to think about and check out. And finally, my contact information, I'm just going to leave that up for a minute. My email, my phone number. I think at the beginning of this presentation, you heard me say, yeah, I think I've been thinking about dead people and taking care of them since I was a child. That's me at about age 4. And I am hoping so much that this talk today generated a whole bunch of questions that I'm going to be able to answer. I want to thank you all for the privilege of your time today. And I'm going to stop my share now, and we'll get back to, there is everybody. And I'm going to let Shanae be in charge of, I see lots of hands raised. Shanae, you go for it.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Sarah, for that presentation. We are so grateful that you were here to provide that valuable information for all of us. So I want to give everyone the option of, if you have a question, you can use the raise hand icon, or you can send your question to me directly via the chat. So we can do it either way. You have both options. I do see 2 hands up. I just want to double check and make sure that they're not hands that were raised when Sarah was asking the questions. So do we have any questions for Sarah? So I see Eve Is your hand up and raised?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, Shanae.
Hi.
I'm really glad to be able to participate. And Sarah, I just want you to know, it just brought tears to my eyes. You have done such a great job preparing this, and there is such a great need for this kind of information. I'm interested in knowing how what you have seen, how long you've been doing this, because I missed that, but what you have seen in terms of interest in home funerals. I'm in New Jersey. I know that green funerals are huge here, but I don't believe I know I've ever heard anyone mention home funerals. So I want to know about those things. Thanks.
Thanks for being here, Eve from New Jersey, my friend. I've been helping families with home funerals since 2014. And as you know, in New Jersey, you will be required to use a funeral director. And that's probably for something as mundane as witnessing the burial or helping file the death certificate. I mean, it's like that. Since 2014, the pandemic really put a hamper on everything to do with dying. And I did my first home funeral in a year in April. And I'm looking at Jack's wife right now. I don't know if she wants to say anything at some point later, but people are learning about this. Lee Webster, the past president of the National Home Funeral Alliance, used to say, you know, the home funeral guides like us, we used to be kind of considered a garage band, but we're starting to get bigger arenas now. People are finding out and thinking, why did we ever switch to a conventional funeral home? This is so beautiful. And yeah, you get the point.
Yeah, I just want to clarify when you said, like in New Jersey, that a funeral director must be involved. Does that mean throughout, or just what you said? Just
it's going to be something simple, like he or she has to witness the burial or cremation, or they're going to help you file the death certificate.
So you can do a home funeral in New Jersey.
Absolutely.
Okay, that wasn't clear to me. Okay.
Yes,
just wanted to
they're
be
legal in every state.
In every state.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Eve, for your question. And Sarah, I do have a question that came in via the chat box. So I want to pose this to you from Jessica. And she asked, do you find hospice facilities are open to speaking with home funeral guides to help promote them?
I've done many presentations at my local hospice and beyond, and I was told many, many years ago it would be difficult because funeral homes support hospice a lot with money. So if I run into a situation where they don't want to release the body to the family, no matter what I tell them about North Carolina law, that yes, your facility might have a policy, but that policy is not a law. They're afraid they're liable. And I'm like, liable for what? The person's dead. The family wants this body to come back home. Well, if you just get to a point where you have to, this is where I call my funeral home and say, or my mortuary transport and say, let's go over, get the body, and they're going to bring the body home. So, you know, we have to be resourceful and think away. And I continue to educate them and say, there is a place for home funeral guides with hospice. There, you can't do everything yourself. Yeah. I hope that answered your question, Jessica Palmer. It can be hard. The same for hospitals. They have policies which they believe to be above the law, which they are not. And it really helps. I think if you have a family member in hospice, try to early on set the stage. Hey, by the way, we are doing things a little bit different than you might be used to. And in case you weren't listening to Sara Williams talk the last 2 times she was here, we're one of those families. maybe they'll come around. And if not, we'll use the mortuary van to get the body home.
Okay. Sherry, I see that you are unmuted. Do you have a question?
I do. And Sara, thank you so much for this really fantastic information. And what I'd love to hear is hear you elaborate on some of your experiences of the symbols, the celebrations, the markers that you've seen in your experience in home funerals. I love the children and the artwork. What are some other things that you could share with us?
Let's see. Let's start with my first one. The early part of the story goes, it was one of my daughter's best friend's mother who was dying, and she was calling. She knew she wanted a natural burial and she wanted to do things at the house, and she kept calling, and she heard my voice, and she hung up, and she called my daughter and said, "Is that your mother who's doing this?" My daughter said, "Yeah." So when her mother died, one of the first things I observed was that the sister was stuck in a back room and did not want to come out. So on the third invitation, we said, why don't you really come? We want you to be here. Maybe you can brush her hair. Well, that's what set it off. She started brushing her hair, and here come the stories, all the stories. Then she said, I have some oil, some essential oil that reminds me of the forest we played in when we were young. Can you use some of that? And I'm like, of course. I showed you a picture of Kate's home funeral in 2017. And for me, the husband was a physician. So Deloy knew a lot of things to do until I got to the house. And you know how you drink the Deer Park water? We drink water out of the plastic bottles. He had about 50 of those frozen. And that's what he was using as chillers before I got there with my Techni ice. And I just found that, resourceful. As a celebrant, that's some of my favorite work to do. I'm so honored when, and I've lost Joan's face. I just want to see if Joan is still here. Joan is still here. But I knew Joan and Jack both. She asked me months and months ago, would I help with his home funeral, and would I do the service at his green burial? And it just went so beautiful. I mean, I could show pictures, but I didn't do that today. I used previous home funerals. Is it Cherry or Cherie?
Cherry.
Cherry.
Cherry, yeah.
Okay, so thank you for those questions. My bet is every one of us on this call has been to a funeral, and we've come away thinking or saying, oh, God, don't let that ever happen to me. Ugh. Never, ever will that happen with a home funeral. It's too organic. It's too beautiful. Things come together. It's like magic. I don't know how else to say it.
Thank you.
That was a long answer.
Thank you, Sherry, for the question. And thank you, Sarah, for your response. I see that Iris has her hand up. So I just want to check and see if she has a question or if it was just left over.
Hi, I'm here under Iris's name.
Iris,
But
okay.
yeah, have got a plot in the Carborough Cemetery, the for green burial. So what I can understand from what you've said, and this has been really interesting, I could actually use the funeral homes to transport the body to that setting then, is that right?
You don't have to use a funeral home at all if you don't.
Oh, you
want
wouldn't
to.
have to, yeah. Or you wouldn't have to, yeah.
In fact, I just bought a oriental rug for the back of my husband's truck, and that is legal. I can, and we'll be doing that.
Oh, okay. Can I use that too?
Absolutely. Reach out to me, contact me, and we'll sit down and plan your home funeral and green burial.
Okay, that sounds good. So that would be good then to have your children in on these conferences, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has really been great.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Sarah, do you want me to add a few words?
So before we get there, I have one more question. I have a couple more questions that have come in through the chat. And so I just want to make sure we get all the questions out. And so Linda, I see your hand is up and you had a question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this. This has absolutely been wonderful. I also bought a plot. My mom is elderly and she's living with us. And I bought a plot in the Carborough Cemetery for green burial. And they said that they require a funeral home to do the opening and closing of the gravesite. And so we got quotes from 2 funeral homes and they both have about $2,300 for professional services, which I believe is the overhead you were talking about. No. As well as the $625 for the opening and closing. Are you saying we can opt out of the professional services?
Listen, I can get you the grave digger from me to you. You don't need to go to the funeral home.
Oh my goodness.
I got the grave digger that Walker's Funeral Home uses, and another one on standby for when I need a grave digger.
Oh, that is fantastic.
So let's see, Linda, professional services, $2,300 from the funeral home, big X. You're going to pay you're going to end up paying somewhere between $650 and $750 to the grave digger for opening and closing the grave on your own.
That is fantastic. So I can just reach out to you to arrange that. Yeah. When the time comes, which hopefully won't be for another few years, but
good. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question, Sarah, that came in via the chat. This has a couple of different parts to it. So the first part is asking if there's an average breakdown that you can provide for the for-profit funeral homes in terms of the casket cost, the embalming cost, the service that they hold there, and in contrast, what would the cost look like for a home funeral?
Like, what do I charge? Yeah. Okay, cool. So the GPL, the general price list, the first thing they asked about was caskets. This is the one item that provides the funeral home the most profit. It's the biggest markup. I know a casket company in the state. Hank, help me out with the name of the company. Every casket that funeral home is going to sell you, they'll bring to your house for $9.95 or something like that. Caskets can, I mean, my God, Zsa Zsa Gabor's casket was gold and cost $40,000. Come on, people. And you're putting all that metal and stuff in the ground. Embalming is anywhere from $250 to $500, let's say. Okay, so Hank, it's Carolina quality caskets. If y'all really want a metal or a oak or a cherry casket, Bryant Little's your man. He'll bring the casket to the funeral home or to your house for $11.95. Okay, thanks, dear. And a funeral home will say, yeah, but you can save money. We're going to bundle this package for you. We'll give you the casket and do all the makeup. And okay, you don't want to be embalmed. Okay. And you can use our chapel. I mean, it's going to be about $4,000. Actually, it's going to be more like $8,000. I charge $100 an hour. And on average, for a home funeral, I'm going to spend 4 to 8 hours with that family. You do the math. That's what I always say. And my initial consultation is free. And I would never deny a family a right to a home funeral if they couldn't pay. I mean, I go in, I'm the guide. I'm going to teach them how to wash, how to anoint, how do we dress the body, and how to keep the body cold. And maybe they don't want a 3-day vigil. Maybe they just want the body there for a day. Then we'll do it like that. I hope that answered your question.
That answered part one. So part two is if a body is buried on a home plot, does that have a substantial negative impact on the resale value of the property if the family ever moves out?
This is one of my favorite questions. Okay. So we've all seen the little family cemeteries as we drive around the state. You have the right to bury on your property. You will call your county health department. They're going to send somebody out to make sure you are following your county's setback rules, like how many feet away from a water source, how many feet away from the fence line, etc. You have to make that, you draw a map, a hand-drawn map, and attach it to your real estate deed. So in case your children or whoever sells that property down the line, they know there's someone buried there. Because if you don't, and little Johnny and Jimmy are playing in the backyard and dig up a skull, you got a crime scene on your hands. So you have to make that reveal. Now, in my mind, if I was buying a house and somebody said, well, you know, their Aunt Bessie's buried out there, I would be ecstatic. I'd be out there every day talking to Aunt Bessie. Now, other people have got this big ick factor going on. Oh my God, there's somebody buried here? I can't, I'm just telling you how I feel. I think it's lovely and sacred ground. And anyway.
Okay, so we have a few more questions that are coming through. I have a couple more in the chat, and I see I have 3 hands that are up currently. And so Joan, quickly, was there something that you wanted to comment? You're
You're
muted.
muted.
Sarah was a celebrant for my husband's green burial and home funeral in the middle of April. And I had him laid out in my house just 2 nights. No, one night. And because I really felt my children would be more comfortable with it, and I think they were. But I will say he had been in he actually had been in 3 memory care facilities, and the last 2 he was at where he was definitely failing. I was totally open with the powers that be there that I had a plan for a green burial. Did not want a funeral home called, and they were very, very respectful of it. He did actually die in the hospice home in Greensboro. He spent, I think, 3 nights there, and they were very on board with it. They were totally respectful of what I wanted to do, and they washed him after death, and they swaddled him in a plain cotton blanket, which is what you need for a green burial. And he was actually buried in a shroud that was custom designed and painted for him, for his interest. I won't go into the whole story, but that eliminated the cost of a casket, and it was very organic. And I knew it was what he wanted, because he just really was so against the smell of funeral homes and what they do to the body. He said that for years. And I had shared it with my 2 children and my grandchildren, and they were totally on board with it, and they participated along with 2 close friends. And it was absolutely wonderful. Frankly, I think my kids might have been a little icked out by it at first, and I wasn't 100% sure, but my husband and I had really been working on the value and the specialness of a green burial for years. And so we were so grateful that it came about. And but what was really precious that I have to share is at the end of the night that we had the green burial, and the burial was the next day, my 2 adult children and my 1 adult grandson were together, and they said, "Oh, this was so special, just what Dad wanted. It was perfect for him. It was perfect for Mom, but mostly it was perfect for us." Because I think they came together in a way that they never anticipated. They didn't know quite what to make of it, but they realized how really special it was. And the fact that we had talked about it for a long time, they were very respectful that this was his wish. And of course, my wish. And so, well, many cheers for Sarah. She did a fabulous job. She made everybody feel relaxed and comfortable. And my friends really, they didn't know anything about a green burial. They were all very touched by it. And I had lovely, lovely comments from so many people that I thought might have been a little icked out about it. But again, we had shared our wishes with them for years. So they really respected that basically I was doing what he wanted. So
a lot of times Joan is saying green burial, because I told you they go so beautifully together. But preface that with the home funeral, which we did. Yeah.
Well, it was, I'm sorry, I muted myself again.
No, now you did. You're muted. You're muted.
Oh, okay. It was just a perfect combination. And Sarah was a celebrant at the gravesite, which our friends really were so touched by. One thing that I believe added a lot was that we had a bagpiper, because my husband was of Scottish descent, and we always loved the bagpipe, and this lone piper was just so perfect. And I cannot tell you how many of my friends just thought it added so much. And Sara could not have done a more superb job.
All right. Moving on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Joan, for sharing your story and your experience and being a beautiful example of having your end of life choices honored and respected for your loved one and having a plan in place. So hopefully we will all follow suit and pay and take heed to your example. So thank you.
And Sinead, let me say, in case you haven't maybe already picked this up from my presentation or how I am as a person, there's always some humor in these situations. And it's just beautiful. That's how it works. We might make mistakes. All is forgiven. And when you can laugh, and the love is even that much bigger.
Yes. All right, so we still have questions that are rolling in for you, Sara. Okay. So I'm trying to move through them.
Okay.
Elizabeth, I see that you have your hand up, so I want to give you the opportunity to ask your question.
Thanks. I'll be brief. 3 things. I'm really happy to find that there are all these people who are going to be with me in Scarborough Cemetery. And we have Ellie Kinnaird to thank for that ability to have a green burial in the Scarborough Cemetery. It's cool. It's my understanding that you cannot bury someone on your land in Scarborough. You can in the county, but Scarborough says no. That could be wrong, but that's my understanding. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was an experience when my mother died here in North Carolina. She wanted to be cremated, and I could not find any closer than Fayetteville a crematory that did not first require embalming. And how crazy is that? And maybe that's changed, and maybe they were just putting me on, and I didn't know any better. But I mean, really.
Yeah. Excellent point, Elizabeth, and that ain't right. No. And it sure ain't required. So if there's anybody that wants to be cremated and somebody's telling you got to be embalmed if you're using my funeral home, you rip out the funeral rule or call me and we'll get them in trouble. That's not right. Sorry that happened.
Okay, I'm gonna pull one of our questions from the chat, and then Eve, I'm going to come to you right after that. So I see you with your hand up. So the question, Sara, that came through in the chat is, how would one arrange to transport a body to another state and arrange burial in another state?
Okay, well, here's my standard immediate reply. There are no funeral police. I'm going to say that again. There's no funeral police. You have to have a burial permit to go across the state line. But guess what, people? That's a document that you get from vital records from your county. And then let's say you get stopped and Aunt Bessie's in the back on ice. You just tell them what you're doing and say, I need an escort. Just take me where I'm going. And you better have checked with the place of final disposition. Where are you carrying Aunt Bessie? To a home for a home funeral? Or is she going to a crematory or a cemetery? You had better already ask, will you accept this body from my personal vehicle? But yeah, And I don't know that I'd carry a body from California to Tennessee. I mean, I guess you could. That's a long haul. It's doable, but it better be well thought out. You better have your paperwork in the car, and yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. So Eve, if you want to unmute
I will
yourself.
be quick. I just want to ask Sarah about what she would suggest specifically for people who would like to pass her information on, or the information that we've learned on. What would be the best way to get the information and pass it along if you wanted to speak to your own church, and if you wanted to speak to your own organizations or whatever, your community? What do you
Well,
recommend?
yeah, Shanae's recording this, so this will be available if you participated today. I think she puts it on their website, and send people to my website or the website for the National Home Funeral Alliance, or yeah. Ann Weston has a website, the Green Burial Project, for those who, like me, feel that it's the two just go together so well, home funerals and green burial.
And just, Eve, let me say that as Sarah has done this beautiful talk for us, she is available to talk to people virtually throughout the US and Canada. So you might try to get on her dance card for a group that you might want to have her speak to them.
What I'm hoping to see is more and more people talking about it organically, like speaking to their friends about it. I'm going to be talking to my own family about it. Sarah and I have known each other many, many years, and well aware of what she's doing. And I think that's great. But I also think we need to replicate this as much as possible in our own states. New Jersey, I want to find out what's going on here and pass that information along. And I want to make sure that I know I can always go back to Sarah and say, look at this, tell me what you think. And then, she'll tell me that's not good or whatever, let's change it. But I brought it up because I want to encourage people to talk about this. It's important to get that information out.
Yeah, and you got a death cafe in your area? I've been hosting a death cafe for 7 years next month. We talk about all of this and more.
Yes.
Deathcafe.com to find one
near you.
Okay, just checking the chat. And I think I've captured all of the questions that were in the chat, and I don't see any more hands up, but I just want to check and see, are there any additional questions? Any other comments? Okay. Well, I want to thank Sarah again for this wonderful presentation and for all of the valuable information that you presented this afternoon, and for always just being a supporter of the Department on Aging, of our End of Life Choices Senior Resource Team, and just being there to say yes when I ask. So thank you.
I want to say in closing that, again, thank you for the privilege of your time. If you learn something new, that just makes my heart so happy. And reach out anytime with extra questions and honestly. It just means the world that people are interested in this topic, and you can't know what you don't know. So that's what we're trying to do. Spread the good news.
Absolutely. And thank you to all of you that joined us this afternoon. We appreciate your support. There will be more programming that you'll see coming from the Department on Aging, and specifically our End of Life Choices Senior Resource Team for the fall. So you want to make sure that you're checking your senior times, which is now Endless Possibilities. Right, Janice? We can start putting that name out there. It's coming. And also you can check online and see all of our programming that will be posted there. Also, we have an open door policy for our End of Life Choices Senior Resource Team. So if any of you are interested in joining one of our meetings, we welcome you to the table to discuss end of life choices. And we hope that you'll bring your experiences, your expertise, and your interest to the group. I'll put my email address in the chat if anyone is interested in reaching out for that. And otherwise, I hope you all have a great evening, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
It was great. Thank you.